Welcome to No Tears for Black Girls, a true crime series created, written, and produced by award-winning writer John Reedberg and hosted by Samantha Paul. Paris Talley was only 28 days old when her mother, China Arnold, placed her in a microwave and turned it on. The helpless infant's skin blistered and charred as the heat ravaged her tiny body from the inside out. In 2005, Arnold was convicted of killing Paris in this unimaginable way. Unlike anything they had encountered before, the medical examiners stared in disbelief at Paris's injuries. Tiny blisters pockmarked her skin. Internal organs were damaged and burnt. They struggled to fathom how a mother could inflict such torture on her newborn baby. It took until 2011 for forensic experts to release more information about how microwaves affect human tissue, spurred by the horrific evidence in Arnold's case. Though it came too late for Paris, her suffering shed light on a new form of abuse that shocked the nation. China Arnold's early life is largely undocumented. Born on March 29, 1980, in Dayton, Ohio, she lived a life with few public details. On August 30, 2005, Paris Talley was being looked after by one of Arnold's sisters, while Arnold and her boyfriend, Terrell Talley, went out for the evening. The couple spent time at a public park, drinking rum and talking. As the evening wore on, they grew intoxicated. Terrell began questioning if Paris was his child, creating tension. They realized they had drunk too much and attempted to go home, but argued along the way. Once at their residence, Terrell left the car angrily while China stayed in the driver's seat. This marked the start of a strained relationship marked by doubt. During a date night, China, Arnold, and Terrell Talley argued over perceived disrespect, which escalated to violence as they drove home. The argument continued upon reaching their destination, leading to Terrell leaving for unknown reasons, and China going upstairs in frustration, staying awake until early morning before calming down. China's sister babysat while she and Terrell went out. Upon returning home inebriated and upset, China took the baby and placed it in the microwave, thinking it would solve their problems. The act resulted in a trial due to its seriousness. Both China and Terrell were known for chaotic behavior and criminal activities. Believing it was her only way to win back Terrell, China put their 28-day-old child in the microwave for 2 minutes on high heat. After finding the baby alive but injured, she cleaned it up and placed it in a car seat next to her as she slept off her intoxication. Terrell returned home at 5 a.m. to find his daughter cold with burns and rushed her to the hospital. Doctors worked for 30 minutes before she succumbed. Police questioned China about the burns, receiving no clear explanation as they did not match her account. China Arnold, a medical professional, disputed with doctors about the burns on her child. Despite their expertise, she claimed Paris only had peeling skin. When inconsistencies arose in her story, police were called. At the hospital, she changed her account again, saying she found Paris crying at 2 a.m., gave her a bottle, but laid her back down when she wouldn't stop crying. Upon waking later, Paris was missing from where she'd been sleeping with Terrell Talley. Terrell had a different account. He arrived around 3 a.m. and slept on the couch without the baby present. These conflicting stories raised suspicion among investigators and led to further questioning of both parents. When he woke up, he found Paris face down in China, already deceased. The police obtained a search warrant to investigate the house, due to conflicting stories from both parents about the cause of burns on the baby. They were looking for heating blankets or other sources of thermal burns, as doctors identified this as the cause of death. The microwave was initially overlooked as a potential source. Neighbors confirmed that China's sister had watched the children while the couple went out. The residue was found in the tub from a bath China had given earlier, but she claimed it was from 3 in the afternoon. The police became suspicious after hearing about arguments over paternity and seeing China waiting on the balcony at 4 in the morning for Terrell's return. When confronted, she changed her story several times before admitting concern that Terrell might take the baby during their argument. However, when asked if the baby had burns upon return, she refused to answer and appeared nervous. China Arnold faced charges of child endangerment following the 2005 death of her daughter, Paris, from hypothermia. A medical examiner identified similar injuries in another case involving a microwave, leading to a homicide ruling. Detectives discovered Paris's DNA in a microwave at the apartment Arnold shared with Terrell Talley. Talley was convicted of aggravated murder and sentenced to life without parole in September 2008, but this verdict was later overturned due to prosecutorial misconduct. Despite multiple trials and appeals, the case remains unresolved.
The third trial begins for a Dayton mother accused of killing her infant daughter in a microwave. Good evening. I'm Michelle Kingsfield.
And I'm Mark Allen. The case itself is now 5 years old, but if a jury convicts China Arnold this time, she could be put to death. Megan O'Rourke has just returned from the courtroom and has the first day's developments. Megan?
Late this morning, the jury was seated, and Judge Mary Wiseman wasted no time getting started with opening statements. About 1:30, with China Arnold seated in front of the courtroom, prosecutors set the stage, detailing the events of August 29, 2005, leading into the next morning, the day 28-day-old Paris Talley died. Prosecutors say Arnold was drunk when she burned baby Paris in a microwave inside their Parkside apartment. They also say Arnold changed her story several times over the years and even confessed to the crime. But Arnold's attorney, John Paul Ryan, says she is not a killer, and the so-called confession has been taken out of context. Now, so far, these are a lot of the same arguments we've heard in Arnold's previous two trials. The first one, of course, ended in a mistrial. The second time, she was found guilty, but that ruling was later overturned because of prosecutorial misconduct. Today, both sides pledged to prove their point.
The state is confident that you will return verdicts of guilty to both the charge of aggravated murder as well as the aggravated circumstance specification, that this defendant is guilty for purposely causing the death of a child under 13.
There would be no way that you could say the government has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that China Arnold purposely caused the death of Paris Talley. And we ask sincerely a finding of not guilty.
Now, opening statements took just about an hour, and after that, the state called its first witness, Dr. Russell Updegrove, to the stand. He's a forensic pathologist for the Montgomery County Coroner's Office. During his testimony, China Arnold asked to leave the courtroom because of the graphic autopsy photos. Now, the trial is scheduled to resume at 8:30 tomorrow morning. There are potential 265 witnesses that could be called to the stand. One other interesting point, the jury is made up of 16 people, including 4 alternates, and out of all of them, only 2 are men. Michelle, court just wrapped up for the day a few minutes ago. So far, the state's called 4 witnesses, including a forensic pathologist, a nurse, the former medical examiner for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and a New York man who's dedicated his life to studying microwave ovens. To this point, all the testimony is focused on establishing the timeline and method of how baby Paris Talley died. China Arnold sits quietly in the front of an almost empty courtroom. Unlike her previous 2 trials, on Wednesday, only a few people filled the pews. Throughout the day, they heard testimony from 4 different people, including Kimberly Snyder, a nurse at Dayton Children's, who was in the trauma room when China Arnold brought in her 28-day-old daughter, Paris Talley.
Just yelling out that her baby was not burned, that her skin was peeling off.
She told the jury Paris was pronounced dead about 15 minutes after she was brought in, but at the time they didn't know what caused the baby's bizarre injuries. It was later determined that baby Paris was burned in a microwave.
She died because she was overheated. She was cooked.
Dr. Marcela Fierro, the former chief medical examiner for the Commonwealth of Virginia, investigated the only other death on record in the U.S. where an infant was killed in a microwave.
I know she died very quickly after her temperature reached 107 or 108.
At one point, the microwave from Arnold's Parkside apartment was wheeled in, and Robert Schiffman, an expert on the appliance, explained why Paris's burns were concentrated on her back.
Microwave energy in this case comes from up here.
Now, the trial is scheduled to resume tomorrow morning at 8:30. Of course, stay with 2 News on air and online at WDTN.com, and we'll keep you posted on any new development. After almost 4 hours of closing arguments, jurors finally have the case. Just a few minutes ago, they started the difficult task of deciding whether or not China Arnold is guilty of aggravated murder, which would mean that she not only killed baby Paris, but that she meant to do it. China Arnold started the 8th day of her homicide trial in good spirits, waving and smiling at family members as they made their way into the courtroom. But her grin was long gone by the time prosecutors took the floor for closing arguments. Assistant Montgomery County Prosecutor Daniel Brandt told the jury Arnold didn't just kill her 28-day-old daughter. She made a series of conscious decisions that ultimately led to the baby's death.
She had to press start to cook her child. And she had to wait while baby Paris was in that oven.
Prosecutors say Arnold could have stopped the oven at any point, but instead let baby Paris burn for at least 2 minutes.
45 seconds. We'll just stop it now.
Prosecutors dramatically counted the seconds as the courtroom sat in silence.
Now, 2 minutes. This baby was cooked in this microwave for at least 2 minutes. If that's not purposeful, I don't know what is.
But Arnold's attorneys call it a case of circumstantial evidence that's been stretched to make China Arnold look like a monster.
Do you really think that any mother could sit there and put their baby in the microwave for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and just sit there?
John Paul Ryan says since day one, investigators have had their sights set on Arnold, even though they've never had hard evidence to prove it.
This case has unanswered questions, and it might have unanswered questions because they've charged the wrong person. And my argument to you isn't that China Arnold's not guilty because they can't prove it. My argument to you is China Arnold's not guilty because she's innocent. Innocent. China Arnold is innocent of these charges.
Now again, the jury has the case right now and is going to be sequestered at a secret location this evening. Of course, we'll let you know as soon as a verdict is reached, so stay with 2 News on air and online for any developments.
China Arnold breaks down after she is convicted of killing her infant daughter in the microwave. Good evening again. I'm Marcia Baumhart.
And I'm Mark Allen. It took the jury less than 7 hours to reach that verdict. Megan O'Rourke was in court today. She is live with family reaction. Megan.
As you probably know, this is Arnold's 3rd trial. The first resulted in a mistrial. The second time, she was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. But that ruling was later overturned by the Court of Appeals, which brings us up to today. Arnold was found guilty, but family members are now criticizing the court, saying she didn't get a fair trial.
This jury, being duly impaneled and sworn, finds the defendant, China Arnold, guilty of the crime of aggravated murder for the death of Terrell Talley on August 30th of 2005.
China Arnold drops her head in defeat as the jury's decision starts to sink in.
To juror number 7, is this your verdict? To juror number 8, is this your verdict?
It took 12 jurors just a few hours to reach the unanimous decision. China Arnold purposely killed her 28-day-old daughter, Terrell Talley, by burning her in a microwave in 2005. Because Arnold still has to be sentenced, the judge kept a gag order in place so prosecutors and Arnold's attorneys aren't able to react. But immediately after court, her family and supporters had lots to say.
This is racism. This is injustice.
Bishop Richard Cox, leader of the local chapter of the SCLC, says an alternate juror was released earlier this week because she was overheard talking about her feelings on the case and Arnold's guilt. Judge Mary Wiseman never addressed the dismissal in open court, and Cox says that raises a lot of questions.
I think this had an effect on the other jurors and effect on the outcome of the guilty verdict in this case. I think it should have been declared a mistrial. I think the judge should have addressed it. She did not.
This makes me think that China didn't get a fair case, because if this juror felt that way, how do we know the rest of them didn't feel this way, already had a preconceived notion that China was guilty?
Crystal McGee says the only thing that was proven in court was that her niece can't get a fair trial in Dayton. And with sentencing still to come and the death penalty on the table, she worries the worst is still to come.
Yes, I'm fearing. I'm fearing for her life. Yes. You know, I have a faith in God, and I have to trust.
Now, the jury was released for the weekend, but will return on Monday for the first day of the death penalty phase. That's essentially a second trial, and jurors will have to decide if Arnold should be put to death.
And the decision on whether a Dayton mom should be put to death for killing her infant daughter in a microwave oven. Megan O'Rourke is live to explain the unusual development today in the China Arnold trial. Megan?
Mark, right now China Arnold is undergoing a mental health evaluation, which has delayed the jury from moving forward with sentencing. On Friday, after just a couple hours of deliberation, the jury found Arnold guilty of aggravated murder. She killed her 28-day-old daughter, Terrell Talley, in a microwave in August 2005. Arnold was scheduled to return to court this morning so that the same jury could start the second phase of her trial, which is to decide whether or not she should get the death penalty. However, Arnold's attorney surprised everyone with the mental health evaluation request, which is typically done before a trial starts. In this case, it's caused a delay, but 2 News legal analyst Larry Denny says it won't affect the jury's verdict.
There's no mistrial. The trial part's over. The assessment, the mitigation phase is asking for the mental assessment will only go to the mitigation phase that the jury is about to consider relative to sentencing. So the trial, guilt or innocence part is unaffected by this.
Now, the findings from Arnold's mental health evaluation are due by 4:30 Wednesday afternoon. Jurors will then return Thursday morning, and at that point, the sentencing phase is scheduled to resume. While China Arnold's family and friends tell me they are relieved that her life has been spared, they're already working with her attorneys to get the appeals process started. In the meantime, Arnold will go back to prison where prosecutors say she belongs.
This jury does therefore unanimously find that the sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole should be imposed upon defendant China Arnold.
Breaking a smile and breathing a sigh of relief, China Arnold is consoled by her attorney immediately after learning the jury's decision to spare her life. It took the jury roughly 6 hours to return their decision, ruling out death and instead opting for a punishment of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I was relieved that the jury seen that there was a life worth saving, because once that death penalty had been afflicted, you can't take it back. And I'm glad that they used common sense and maybe a little doubt.
Last week, the same jury found Arnold guilty of killing her 28-day-old daughter, Terrell Talley, in a microwave oven in 2005.
Fight's not over. We're very satisfied that the jury saw that China Arnold has a lot of worth in who she is as a person.
Arnold's attorney, John Paul Ryan, says there are witnesses who have information that proves his client is innocent, but they were not allowed to testify. You may remember this is Arnold's third trial. The first resulted in a mistrial because of a new witness who came forward during the proceedings. Arnold was convicted and sentenced to life in prison during the second trial, but that ruling was later overturned because of prosecutor misconduct. This time, the state's attorneys say they got it right.
As it stands right now, this defendant has been convicted twice now by 2 separate juries who heard the facts of this case, not just rumors that were circulating in the community, but the facts and evidence of this case that proved beyond any doubt that this defendant committed this heinous crime.
Thank you for listening to No Tears for Black Girls. Please download the Alive Podcast app and follow us on all major podcast platforms to stay updated with our latest content. If there is a topic or true crime case that you would like us to cover, please send us an email at notearsforblackgirls@gmail.com or visit our website, notearsforblackgirls.com, and leave us a voice message through our contact page. And always remember, stay loved, stay blessed, and be safe.